Okay, so I'm going to give everyone just a couple minutes to get logged in, and then we'll get started. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Takara Wilson, and I am the program specialist here at the Tennessee Coalition for our Delta prevention team. And through Delta, we primarily focus on the prevention of intimate partner violence. And so today we'll talk a little bit about intimate partner violence amongst our youth and young adults. And some of our learning objectives will define intimate partner violence and go over just some basic types. We will go over some stats around intimate partner violence in young adults, risk and protective factors, as well as warning signs, and then some long and short-term effects of that violence. And then we'll close out with a few resources. Okay, so what's intimate partner violence? Uh, it is physical, sexual violence, stalking, or psychological harm by a current or former partner. It doesn't have to be someone that you are currently in a relationship with. And intimate partner violence can occur amongst heterosexual or same-sex couples, and it does not require sexual intimacy. Intimate partner violence amongst youth and young adults is often referred to as dating violence. And so you will hear me interchange intimate partner violence and then dating violence throughout the webinar. Dating violence can also take place either in person, online, or through technology. And what do I mean by technology? I'm meaning things like cell phones. So it could be through phone calls or even text messages. We know that dating violence also has a profound effect on our lifelong health. We know that through ACEs, if any of you are familiar with ACEs. And unhealthy relationships can last throughout one's lifetime. But one thing that I want you to kind of hold on to as our bit of hope throughout the webinar is that intimate partner violence or dating violence is preventable. And so we'll go over some of those prevention tips in just a little while. So some types of dating violence. We will start with physical violence, and that's obviously when someone hurts or tries to hurt a partner by hitting them or kicking them and using other types of physical force. And I think that physical violence is kind of what we all think of in our minds first when we're thinking about dating violence or intimate partner violence. It's our go-to reference. Next is sexual violence, and it's forcing or attempting to force a partner to take part in a sex act or sexual touching when the partner does not or cannot consent. Okay. And I want to emphasize the words cannot consent because it's important to know and to teach that the absence of a no is not automatically the presence of a yes. So sexual violence also includes non-physical sexual behaviors as well, like posting or sharing sexual pictures of a partner without their consent. Things like sexting We are all familiar with that term of sexting. And at one point, this would have referred to sexual violence would have referred to things like revenge porn, but we're getting away from that term of revenge porn simply because it suggests that the victim somehow deserved it because of the use of that word revenge. So that is sexual violence, but we have gotten away from using that term currently. Okay, psychological or emotional aggression. It's the use of verbal and nonverbal communication with the intent to harm a partner mentally or emotionally and exert control over a partner. So this would involve threatening to harm someone or attacking their self-worth. Some examples of that would be calling someone names or exhibiting jealous behavior, monitoring them all the time, shaming or bullying, whether that's online through text messages or even in person, and then intentionally embarrassing a person, especially in front of their friends or their family members. Essentially, it would be creating insecurities in someone that you maybe already know exists in them. If they are a little bit insecure about a haircut and you constantly point that out in private or in front of others, that would be considered emotional aggression or psychological aggression. Stalking. So, stalking is a pattern of repeated unwanted attention and contact by a partner that causes fear and concern for one's own safety or the safety of someone who is close to that victim. Okay. So, just take a moment to think about how difficult it would be for a teenager or a college student to have someone to believe that they're being stalked, especially if it's by another student. Because likely that teenager, that college student is going to be spending most of their time in the same places as the person who is stalking them. They're going to have the same hangout spots because that's where their age demographic frequents. Um, think about how discouraging that could be for them to even tell anyone what's happening. And then on the flip side of that coin, think about how easy it would be for a perpetrator to hide behind those commonalities that they have with that victim and then use that against them to continue stalking. They could do things like join the same clubs as their victim or same organizations on campus, attend the same sporting events, especially if that victim plays on a team for the school and that stalker could continue to come to those games. And imagine if they also even lived in the same dorm as the victim, how difficult that would be and how easy it would be for that stalker to continue that behavior. Okay, so a little bit of dating violence data. So nearly 1 in 11 female and approximately 1 in 14 male high school students report having experienced dating violence within the past year. And about 1 in 8 females and 1 in 26 male high school students report having experienced sexual dating violence in the last year. So about 11 million women and about 5 million men who reported experiencing contact sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by a partner in their lifetime said that they first had those experiences before the age of 18. So there's two things that strike me when I'm thinking about these stats. And the first would be that these numbers are based on reporting. So imagine what those numbers would look like if everyone was reporting what was happening to them. And then second, this is where sometimes a lifelong cycle or battle begins with violence before the age of 18. And for some of these victims, it carries out over their entire lifetimes. Okay. So other violence data. dating violence is taking place as young as middle school. And I know for those of us who are advocates of youth, mentors, or even parents, it's a little bit difficult to wrap our minds around the fact that this is happening in middle school. But it is, and this is a reason that we need to address it at a younger age as well. And then some teens are also at a greater risk than others for dating violence. Okay. So sexual minorities, racial or ethnic minority groups are disproportionately affected by all types of violence. And so dating violence is not the exception to that rule. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a video of what dating violence could look like.
Stone cold, do it how you on home, do it I I'm looking for a way out. I'm not where did you wear? No. Just, I don't want people thinking about this. I won't ask you again. I'm sorry. Well done. Who's that?
Listen, he said he wanted to get together soon so we could finish this family.
You know, you've been spending a lot of time with Mason.
I mean, he's in my project. It's kind of essential for a group project.
I'm not mad that he's in your group or you gotta work together or whatever, but just spend a lot of time with him. He's not your boyfriend.
It's school.
But he's not your boyfriend. I'm your boyfriend.
You're right. Okay.
Okay. So in this video, you're able to see some of those types of violence that may not be as easy to recognize as physical violence would be. Like in the video, he never hits her, but he does use aggression. He implies that she's easy or promiscuous because of how she's dressed when she gets in the car, and then he demands that she covers up. He showed up where she was and he wanted to control who she spends time with, regardless of how she's affected by that. If you notice, she was having a really good time. Looks like she was listening to music with a friend, and as soon as he contacted her, her entire disposition immediately changed, and she knew that she needed to get up and leave immediately. He questioned who she was spending time with for class assignments when her phone rang or when she got a text message. He required an explanation for who she was talking to, who was contacting her, why they were contacting her. And she gave all of those things. And that's not to blame her. It just shows, the fear that she was willing to give him that information out of fear. Okay. So what's the problem? How has dating violence become such a big part of society, especially for young adults? What's happening? So one of the things that's happening is that teens often think some behaviors like teasing or name calling are a normal part of a relationship, um, even though these behaviors can become abusive or lead into serious forms of violence. How many of us have heard things like, oh, this person only teases you because they like you, or he hits you or pulls your hair because he likes you? And I think that's because society has set these expectations early that love or relationships have to come with some form of suffering. I think that's just kind of embedded into our culture now, and it's something that does need to change. Also, many teens do not report unhealthy behaviors because they're afraid to tell family and they're afraid to tell friends. Why are they afraid to tell? Fear of retaliation, being ostracized by classmates. We're talking about a time in their lives where a sense of belonging is one of the most important parts of their lives. So they don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that and kind of get them kicked out of that inner circle of friends, if you will. What are some other reasons that dating violence is kept a secret lots of the time? Uh, the parties involved tend to be inexperienced in dating relationships. So they don't always know what's appropriate in a relationship, especially if appropriate behavior hasn't been modeled for them in their lives. There are romanticized views about love and violence. Back to thinking that relationships should come with some form of, drama or turmoil, or the person doesn't care about you. If there's no jealousy involved, the person doesn't care about you. These are messages that we kind of send out as a part of our society now through social media, through movies, just what our youth see on a regular basis. They feel pressure from their peers to be in a relationship. Uh, Everyone else is dating, and they just don't want to be left out of there. Most of us have made some of the worst decisions of our lives, I think we can agree, when we were trying to fit in. And so they're just wanting to fit in and have a significant other, just like, most of their friends do at that age, whether that's high school or college. And there's a desire to be independent from their parents. So having a significant other a lot of times makes them feel grown up. It makes them feel more independent, especially at a time where they may be going through a phase of rebellion anyway. Okay. So there are some things that make some young adults more at risk of being victims of dating violence than other young adults. So what are some of those things? First, they may be living in poverty or come from disadvantaged homes, and they may also have received some type of interaction with the Department of Children's Services at some point through their childhood. That can be a risk factor. They are exposed to violence within their community or the neighborhoods that they live in. So it's something that they're seeing on a regular basis. They experience stressful life events or show symptoms of trauma, especially at a younger age. And that could link back to the involvement of child protective services. That trauma could have caused child protective services to be a part of their lives, sometimes on several occasions. And another risk factor is those who begin dating at an earlier age. Again, it goes back to that inexperience, not knowing what a relationship should look like, especially if they're starting those relationships younger and younger. Remember, I mentioned intimate partner violence is occurring as young as middle school. And so in middle school, they're likely to not have a grasp on what a relationship should look like. But all of these risk factors suggest that there is some amount of violence that has occurred at some point very early in their lives and kind of started them on this path towards dating violence. Okay. So just like there are risk factors for being a victim of dating violence, there are also risk factors for perpetrating dating violence. So some of those would include problems managing anger or frustration, someone who's quick to be upset, association with violent peers, just simply that their friends do the same thing. Their friends are violent, their friends are in relationships where they're violent towards their partners. Low self-esteem and depression, not having parental supervision and support. So maybe no one to talk to, no one at home who's looking out for warning signs. Witnessing violence at home or in the community. So their caregivers, their parents, their guardians might be involved in an abusive relationship themselves. And so this is what's being modeled for them at home. Okay. So it's not enough that we know that dating violence is happening, especially with our youth. We have to know how to recognize it in relationships. And this is not a comprehensive list of some of those warning signs. It's just some of the more basic, more popular warning signs that we might see. So something that might be a warning sign is someone who's checking your phone, your email, your social media without your permission. They constantly need to check. Your word's not enough. They need to see for themselves who you've been talking to, who you've been communicating with on a day-to-day basis. Putting you down frequently, especially in front of others. Kind of making you the joke in the room in front of peers. Isolating you from friends and family, whether that be physically, financially, or emotionally. And some of the things that I think of when I hear that is when someone's saying things like, oh, no one else will ever care about you or love you the way that I do. I need you with me all the time. I can't be without you, not even for 1 minute. Kind of isolating you and then making you feel guilty when you are wanting to spend time away from that partner. Okay. Extreme jealousy or insecurity. Again, not wanting you to be with anyone, saying things like, I don't want to share you. I can't share you with other people. And then the jealousy, like in the video we just watched, he couldn't handle her being with another guy, even for a school project, because that guy wasn't her boyfriend and he was. Remember, he just kept saying that he's not your boyfriend, as if that entitled him to her. Okay. Explosive outbursts, temper, or mood swings. So just becoming angry over the smallest things, and angry just out of nowhere. So some other common warning signs. Of course, since physical violence is our go-to for dating violence, a common warning sign that we would think of or would be our go-to is bruises. And then an unlikely explanation of those bruises or any injuries that you might have. And then those injuries occurring either frequently or the severity of those injuries increasing. Wearing heavy makeup to cover up those bruises, or even wearing inappropriately heavy clothing to cover up bruises, especially when the clothing is not appropriate for the season. Someone might be covering up bruises with long sleeves in the summertime. But I do want to point out that this might not always indicate abuse, especially with current trends with youth of wearing things like hoodies in the summertime. That seems to be like the new fashion trend for our young adults. So I want to point out that that could be the case as well. It's not necessarily an end all be all sign that someone's being abused because they're wearing clothing that we might find inappropriate for the season. Another would be missing class or withdrawing from campus activities, especially with someone who has been known to be outgoing and then suddenly they begin to withdraw, or they're only spending time with that partner and no longer being social with friends. Okay, some short and long-term effects of dating violence. So dating violence isn't something that you're able to experience and then no longer be affected by once the violence ends. Effects could be over 6 months or they could be over a lifetime. So some of those effects would include doing poorly in school or not attending school due to feeling unsafe. So imagine if the person that's hurting you is in your class. We mentioned earlier about that person possibly living in the same dorm or attending the same events as you. You're having to see this person all over campus, and that may strike fear in a person. I would totally understand if it did, and then they begin to withdraw. They don't feel safe in class. They don't feel safe on campus, especially if they don't have support or have anyone that, even believes them. Okay. Short or long-term effect: binge drinking, smoking, using drugs, or engaging in unhealthy diet behaviors, including taking diet pills or laxatives, and vomiting to lose weight. So anything that numbs the pain of what's happening with the abuse. Also, if someone's constantly belittling you or even judging you for your appearance, this could be a factor in unhealthy dieting or weight loss as well. And then attempting suicide and reporting feelings of hopelessness and sadness, especially if that victim doesn't see a way out of the situation. Again, if they have no support. Okay, more short and long-term effects: developing a negative body image and becoming uncomfortable with their sexuality. And we mentioned that a little bit with the dieting and things like that. Being overly dependent on others and not achieving independence. They may be convinced by their partner that they can't do anything without them. And so they are unable to make decisions on their own because they feel like they need that person to tell them what to do. Okay. Violence in an adolescent relationships set the stage for problems in future relationships, including intimate partner violence and sexual violence perpetration and or victimization through life. So someone might continue to become a victim. We know that through the stats that we discussed earlier, or they may perpetrate that same violence on another person. They may have decided that, this is the last time that this will happen to me. This is the last time that I'll be a victim. And then they start to become violent with other people. And I think a lot of times we talk about continued victimization, but we don't necessarily talk about victims becoming perpetrators. I don't think we talk about that as much, but it does happen. And we definitely want to stop both. Okay, more short and long term effects. And keep in mind, this is, again, not a comprehensive list. This is just some of the ones I've picked out. And this is a long list, and it's not even everything that can be included. So victims of dating violence may also find it challenging to establish intimacy with a partner, and they may be unable to establish that intimacy even in a healthy relationship. They may find it challenging to become a positive member of society. It could be a challenge to develop a personal value system. They've always done what they're told, and so they don't necessarily know what their values are. And establish an adult identity. That might be difficult. Again, they've leaned on someone else or felt that they had to lean on someone else to tell them what to do, where to go, how to behave. And some of these could simply be because of unaddressed trauma from living according to what someone else wants or needs from them. Okay. So I believe it's really important for us to see an example of when someone's been able to overcome. And so since This Is Us is one of my guilty pleasures, one of my favorite shows, I pulled a clip from that show that I'll have you guys watch.
Can I help you?
It's Kate Pearson.
Wow. Kate Pearson. What are the odds? Do you live in SD? Vacationing?
No. We share a friend on Facebook. I actually figured out where you work because I wanted to come and see you.
Oh, okay. So,
I was just wondering if I wanted to talk to you about some things.
what? Now, hang tight, girl. 3 smoke breaks in 1 hour? Sorry. We'll talk about this. You gotta work here. You gotta work. You got 5 minutes. It's not a long-term job. I got this band I've been managing, and we're getting a residency at this club, so
Okay, can I ask you a question?
okay, sure.
What do you remember about our relationship? Like when you look back on it, I mean.
Really? That's why you're here? To rehash our 6-month relationship from 20 years ago?
You know what? Forget it. Forget about it. Goodbye, Mark.
Sorry. Hold on. Sorry. I'm sorry. When I look back on it, I think we were in love. You had great taste in music, and you were broken, in all the right places. And yeah, things got intense at times, but like kids.
No. I was a kid. You were a 24-year-old man. And I wasn't broken. I was grieving. My dad just died, and I was destroyed and so vulnerable, and you knew it. You liked it. Well, no, I'm not finished. What you did to me, how you held my self-esteem in your hand, and then you decided to crush it, damaged me, Mark. For years, I swallowed my dreams, my feelings, and a lot of food. No, look at me. Look at me. You need to get this. The time that it took for me to heal from you stole years of my life, and I can't get them back. It took me a while, yeah, but I found someone who loves me the way that I deserve to be loved. I have a beautiful son and an incredible husband who's actually in that car and who was just like seconds away from wanting to just pulverize you with his bare hands. I'm not broken. You're the one that's broken. You're the disease. And I'm not carrying it a moment longer. So I give it back to you. Good luck with it, Mark.
Okay. And for those of you who are not familiar with the show, this is a clip from This Is Us, and the two characters, Kate and Mark, were in a relationship in their youth. Kate was a teenager, yeah, and Mark was in his early 20s at the time. And the relationship was extremely unhealthy. He was abusive towards her physically and emotionally. Um, and there's so much to unpack in that clip, but just some of the things that I'll go over is notice how he said that she was broken in all the right places, which was just a disgusting way for him to put that. Listen to how he describes their relationship. He describes the violence in their relationship as just simply intense. He refuses to take any responsibility for what happened. He refuses to take any responsibility for his actions, even though it's been years. He's still unable to do so. And just from that clip, even though it's a TV show, my guess is that he is still engaging in unhealthy relationships, even after all those years. Uh, I love how Kate mentions, again, long term effects of that relationship. She talked about how it stole years of her life that she can't get back. She mentioned eating a lot. If you're familiar with the show, you know that Kate has had some issues with an eating disorder over time on the show. And that was her drug. She used food. And I do want to point out that sometimes getting this type of closure, the type of closure that Kate was able to get here in this clip, is not possible. And I'm not suggesting that anyone go out and seek this type of closure, because making an attempt to do so may not be safe. Uh, this is a good example here, but keep in mind this is a TV show. So I don't recommend that anyone go out and seek this. Um, So although Kate's able to get some form of closure and she feels justified here at the end when she says, I give it back to you. I love that statement, by the way, from her. We have to recognize that you can't always give it back, not in this way, not in person. Um, but the goal is still at the end of the day to prevent. We want to prevent anyone from even needing the type of closure that Kate gets at the end of this clip. We want to prevent the violence from occurring in the first place. So let's go over some tips for preventing dating violence from occurring. What can we do? So first, we can acknowledge that dating violence is a serious issue, that it exists. If we're pretending it's not happening, it's going to continue to happen. But more importantly, if we pretend that it's not happening at such a young age, it will continue to happen, and that age may get younger. Going back to acknowledging that dating violence is happening as young as middle school now. And that's why we need to begin promoting healthy relationships at a younger age as well, because youth are getting into relationships at a younger age. And I know a lot of times there can be a fear of discussing relationships with younger groups, um, because there's a fear that we're providing permission for younger youth, like middle school age students, to begin relationships. But there are some resources that can help to make sure that the information that you're providing on dating is age appropriate, and we'll get to those in just a second. Okay, what else can we do? Changing attitudes towards violence. And this is including not only those healthy relationships, but addressing things like rape culture. And if you aren't familiar with rape culture, some examples of that would be like saying things that we've heard, like if you weren't dressed that way, then this wouldn't have happened to you. It would also include things like shaming young women who explore their sexuality while also encouraging men to be sexually promiscuous. Also, a prevention method would be legislation. So in Tennessee, we do have legislation that urges the Department of Education to develop sexual violence and teen dating violence awareness curriculum um, to be presented once in grades 7 and 8, and then at least one additional time, preferably 2 more times, when youth are in grades 9 through 12. And that curriculum is just intended to increase awareness of teen dating violence and sexual violence, um, including rape prevention strategies. And so we at least have that here in Tennessee, but not all states have that available to them. Okay. So just to end, there's a couple resources that I would like to go over. And these resources are where I pull the information for this PowerPoint, but it also goes more into detail about signs, symptoms, and protective factors of dating violence. The first is Love is Respect, and it's more age appropriate for teens, middle high school age. And Love is Respect, if you go onto YouTube and type that in, they have some really great kind of PSA videos, like the one I showed that was from Love is Respect. The one I showed with the teenagers in the car, that comes from them. So there's some tools like that available through their website. And if you search them on YouTube, search Love is Respect on YouTube. WomenAgainstAbuse.org, they have some really good age appropriate resources, particularly for teens, to be able to break some dating violence information down in an age appropriate way. And they have that for various ages, even if you are looking into finding information for those who are around the college age. Youth.gov, it has some really good information again for teens. I love the way that that site goes deeper into some of the risk factors as well as the protective factors of dating violence in a way that's easy to understand and easy to pass on to youth as well. And then last but not least, we have BeTheFriend.org, and that is a campaign created by the coalition through our prevention team, our Delta prevention team here. And Be the Friend has a website, BeTheFriend.org, that pulls some PSAs together for more of the late teen college age group. There's some shareable statistics there. There's an opportunity to sign up for the mailing list there. And that mailing list isn't necessarily for agencies or providers. It's actually for youth. So they can sign up for their mailing list and receive information on dating violence and just some things that they can do to protect themselves and to help friends who might be in a dating violence situation as well. So if you're like me, you have questions about webinars days or week after they have occurred. So please don't hesitate to reach out. This is my email address. Email me anytime, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible with any resources that I can help you with, or if you're interested in any other trainings, please reach out. And I appreciate you all tuning in today. Thank you.